With so many villains out there in DC Comics, some tend to hog the spotlight, but the others are still much more dangerous than we might give them credit for. Things for Batman got really chaotic around the same time his childhood friend Tommy Elliot showed up back in town. That's because Elliot was actually the villain Hush, working with the Riddler and a whole bunch of other villains to completely bamboozle the Dark Knight and push him to the edge of his limits. Batman Hush was a huge and amazing story arc for Batman, and Tommy for his part managed to stay one step ahead of his old friend, fooling Batman at every turn. Sure, Batman was eventually able to turn things around, and granted Hush has a deep understanding of Bruce and he wasn't the only mastermind behind the entire scheme in its totality, but he did a heck of a lot, especially on his first ever outing as a villain. It's a shame he hasn't been able to show that potential in another story yet. He could realistically cause quite a problem for not only Batman again, but others in the DC universe. Wonder Woman, being a warrior-bound Amazon, sometimes daughter of Zeus, is one tough lady. And as you'd expect, a good chunk of her opponents are equally, if not more, physically intimidating and pack one heck of a punch. And then there's Dr. Psycho. Dr. Psycho is not physically intimidating. He is 3'9" with no kind of super strength. He's short, which can be scary, but what Dr. Psycho lacks in physicality, he makes up for in being absolutely psychotic, but also one of the strongest telepaths on the planet. Psycho can match up to Martian Manhunter in terms of his telepathic prowess and can control multiple different minds with his powers. On top of that, he is just so incredibly sadistic that when combined with the absolute power, he can and has caused a bad day for even someone as capable as Wonder Woman. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as chief of a tribe of other cavemen. But when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to aging, disease, and fatigue. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas of the human experience, even basically becoming immune to pain. Vandal Savage has become an incredibly solid villain, usually at around a B-level status, as he does cause problems but hasn't really had much of an impact. But I guess he only really needed a couple hundred more centuries, because in DC 1 million, set in the 853rd century, he teamed up with Solaris and stranded his time's Justice League in the past and the present's Justice League in his time, which very nearly almost meant the end for both teams. He didn't win, but most villains don't. That's not the point. Mark Richards isn't the first man to take on the title of Tattoo Man. Before him were Abel Tarrant and John Oakes, and their powers are all very similar. According to Mark, his tattoos are apparently made up of the literal sins of the people that he has sent to the grave. These tattoos can then peel off of his body by sheer force of will and come alive. His ink can do a lot of different things and has lots of ways to attack his enemies. Over the years, he has fought superheroes with tattoos of tigers, blam blams, cars, ships, monsters, bears, fire, planes, and even dinosaurs. Tattooed Man has never really been considered a serious threat, despite the fact that he is only limited by his imagination. In Marvel Comics, there is a mutant who has a similar ability, and he was able to access the Phoenix Force with a tattoo of it. Looking at that character gives us a good idea of things that Tattooed Man might be able to do if he was given the right story and the right writer. As some of you nerds may know, nature and plant-based powers in DC Comics are incredibly OP. Think of characters like Poison Ivy or Swamp Thing. Magic-based powers are also incredibly OP. Think of characters like Dr. Fate or Zatanna. Blackbriar Thorn is a character who has a bit of both, or potentially could. As a perfect villain to the Golden Age Green Lantern Alan Scott, who had a weakness for wood, Blackbriar had learned to survive for a very long time by replacing his flesh with enchanted wood. His magic has been powerful enough to face multiple different rosters of the Justice Society, and he is incredibly hard to actually defeat as he can reincarnate himself in new bodies made of wood. His magic makes him a good foil for other magic using heroes and makes him incredibly useful against Kryptonians, and you really only need one writer to make his wooden body, chlorokinesis and geokinesis, connected to DC's The Green, and boom, he is a villain who could cause absolutely massive problems for the entire world. Roger Hayden, also known as Psycho Pirate, is quite the capable guy. Hayden wears a faceplate called the Medusa Mask, which can control the emotions of anyone nearby, and he staunchly believed that this was his ticket to riches and power. When heroes or the police try to stop stop his crime sprees, Psycho Pirate just uses his mask to overwhelm his opponents with shame, guilt, or depression. He can also make a person develop a phobia of anything he wants them to be afraid of, like, in his debut, he made Dr. Fate, one of the most powerful magic users in DC Comics, develop cytophobia, aka the fear of food, and then he attacked Fate with a pizza. That's amazing! Psycho Pirate has played a huge part in some of the biggest DC comics ever, including Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. If you needed more proof, Amanda Waller, the head of the Task Force X program, aka the Suicide Squad, has claimed that Psycho Pirate is one of the scariest beings in the universe, calling him a man who could make gods go mad and a man who could make the mad gods sane again. Now look, I know that the Riddler is easily one of Batman's top villains, but I still think he hasn't really been able to achieve his true potential. Believe it or not, Batman has actually admitted that the Riddler is more intelligent than he is. Obviously, Riddler is also incredibly insane, but even in his insanity, the Riddler is smart enough and self-aware enough to realize that he is insane, which somehow only served to further expand his intelligence. In terms of street-level villains, few can stand up to the intelligence of the Riddler. Just like Batman himself, Riddler always has backup plans for his backup plans. He plays for most outcomes, but he usually sets traps and plans that are so well thought out, he doesn't even need his backup plans most of the time. He was the one to face the Joker in the War of Jokes and Riddles, he served as a competent villain for even superpowered foes like the Flash, and I don't think it's happened yet, but he could easily make for a really great mastermind behind a plot against a team like the JLA if given the chance. He might have to work on his insanity and riddle obsession though, because he usually gives stuff away. The villain, Dr. Sivana, is a scientific genius, mastering almost all the scientific disciplines that exist on Earth. He is one of the cookie cutters that people think of when talking about mad scientists. He is also the arch enemy of Shazam and the Captain Marvel family. He has elevated himself beyond just being a scientific genius, studying the occult and being able to teach himself how to harness magic, specifically after he joined forces with Mr. Mind and when he reawakened Black Adam, which is when his right eye became capable of seeing magical energies. One of his best moments came in the Multiversity Thunderworld adventures. Sivana literally attacks the Rock of Eternity with a bigger Rock of Eternity, his own Shazam-like team of superpowered children, and his own multiversal duplicates. He manages to take the wizard prisoner and mine the rock for its power, granting himself his own monstrous Shazam-like form. It really is a testament to his level of threat that he is one of the biggest villains for one of the most powerful heroes in DC Comics. The Watchmen comic has this knack for being rather realistic in terms of comic books. This does mean that the heroes who make up the Watchmen, with the exception of Dr. Manhattan, aren't really superpowered, but this honestly makes their version of the smartest man on Earth, Adrian Veidt, aka Ozymandias, actually quite terrifying. Ozymandias is wildly intelligent, but because of Watchmen's realism, he doesn't often make the same stupid ego-fueled mistakes that other villains like Lex Luthor, for example, do. The heroes kind of find themselves a little conflicted when facing him, and that's because he is genuinely trying to help everyone, except for the millions or billions of people who perish for his goals to become reality. Because he genuinely did succeed at his plan, staging an elaborate psychic catastrophe in order to trick the human race into thinking that aliens from another dimension were invading our world and uniting them against a common enemy at the cost of 3 million lives. Ozymandias is also possibly responsible for pulling strings throughout the entire multiverse in order to enact his own wills. And finally today, Killer Moth is not someone you see talked about as being dangerous or powerful. Drury Walker first appeared all the way back in Batman number 63 from February of 1951, and his whole shtick is just goofy. Killer Moth wanted to be the criminal's version of Batman, so he got himself a moth signal and a mothmobile. He even set up a false identity as millionaire philanthropist Cameron Van Cleer. He promoted himself to Gotham's criminals using his identity as Killer Moth, giving them each an infrared moth signal to call him to their aid. Now he didn't really fight for them. Instead, he kind of became the distraction for the authorities so that the real criminals could get away. Later on, he would deduce Batman's identity, and at another point, he sold his soul to the demon Neron and became a giant moth-like monster known as Chiraxes. He may be a bit of a joke, but Mothman has caused some serious problems on a few occasions. That's all I got. I will catch you guys on the Flippy Flop. I'm Adam Andrews. Be sure to take care of yourselves, and as always, peace out, nerds.